Number 10. The world's largest submerged airplane. In 2016, an Airbus A300 cargo plane was deliberately sunk off the coast of Kusadisi, a city in western Turkey. The aircraft had recently retired after a 36-year career in the sky before plunging to its final resting place, where it functions as an artificial reef for marine life. Measuring 177 feet from nose to tail and with a wingspan of 144 feet, the A300 is the world's largest submerged airplane. Turkish officials made the decision to sink it in a bid to increase tourism to the region by turning it into a dive site. In the handful of years since the aircraft was relocated to its current home, it's become covered in coral and is quickly turning into a thriving aquatic habitat. Prime real estate for the fishes. For the most part, the plane was sunken in its original condition, minus several different safety measurements that were taken to eliminate any environmental hazards. And as it turns out, the move to boost tourism worked. Diving has increased noticeably in the region, presumably due to the rare and unique opportunity to see fish and other creatures living in and around a cargo plane. Number 9. Mexico's flooded caves. 66 million years ago, a 9.3-mile-wide asteroid slammed into what is now Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula, carving out a 124-mile-wide crater in the Earth's surface. It was the same catastrophic event that wiped out the dinosaurs. A mega tsunami followed, creating thousands of limestone sinkholes in the process. Over time, these sinkholes collapsed and eroded, forming vast underwater cave networks known as cenotes. These networks seem to go on endlessly, and new discoveries are continuously being made inside them. Just a few years ago, news headlines announced the discovery of the world's largest underwater cave within the system. It stretches on for 215 miles. In 2012, cave divers discovered a near-complete human skeleton near Tulum in a submerged cave called Chanhol. Unfortunately, by the time the marine archaeologists reached the site, most of the remains were gone. All that remained were roughly 150 bone fragments, including a pelvic bone. Luckily, the remaining bones provided experts with enough evidence to accurately determine that the person they belonged to died at least 13,000 years ago. The individual was a young man who perished before the caves were filled with water. This was just one of several fascinating discoveries that have been made within Mexico's largely unexplored cenotes. In August of 2019, a team of researchers consisting of scuba divers, archaeologists, photographers, and computer graphics experts announced plans to make 3D visuals of the insides of dozens of the caves. Known as the Wonderland Project, the images will enable people to virtually explore a region that has never been publicly accessible from the comfort of their homes. The cenotes are supposed to contain everything from fossilized bones to ancient Mayan artifacts. Most of the time, divers have left artifacts untouched to avoid disturbing sacred sites. Some objects are simply too delicate to be moved or even touched, making the Wonderland Project all the more important by preserving items that may otherwise be lost to time. Number 8. W.C. Kimball Wreck. In 1891, a strong gale capsized a 40-ton wooden schooner called the W.C. Kimball in northern Lake Michigan with 4 people aboard. The wreck was lost until 2019. Curious divers and shipwreck hunters found the vessel 300 feet beneath the waves. They were pleasantly surprised when they realized that it's one of the most intact 19th-century wooden schooners ever discovered. W.C. Kimball was built in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. She spent her entire career on Lake Michigan, according to shipwreck hunter and author Ross Richardson, who found the ship in 2018 when he noticed a small blip on his sonar while sailing across the lake. Unsure of exactly what it was, he eventually returned to the site with a technical diver and an underwater photographer. The schooner bore no identifying marks despite its pristine condition. As a result, the process of identifying the wreck was complicated and time-consuming. Richardson spent weeks poring over more than 6,000 schooner records before finally identifying W.C. Kimball as the probable candidate. Upon taking a closer look, researchers noticed that the vessel's lifeboat was still attached, indicating that the distressed crew was unable to reach for it for one reason or another. It's possible that they had already gone overboard by the time the ship sank. Number 7. Chook Lagoon Vehicle Graveyard. At the bottom of Chook Lagoon in waters belonging to Micronesia, there's an eerie graveyard containing a World War II-era ghost fleet of Imperial Japanese ships, planes, and tanks. The vehicle sank in February 1944 during a massive air and sea attack that the U.S. Navy launched against the Japanese, known as Operation Hailstorm. It saw the destruction of 270 planes and 45 marine vessels. Japan forged a friendship with Micronesia during the late 19th century when Japanese sailors were first welcomed there. After World War I, the League of Nations revoked Germany's possession of the region and handed jurisdiction over to Japan, which proceeded to turn the islands into a fortified stronghold. Today, the sunken vehicle graveyard at Chook Lagoon, formerly known as Chook Lagoon, is a popular diving site. The most experienced explorers often spot things they've never seen before, even after making a dozen or so trips to the site. In addition to the dozens of vehicles to be found there, there's a plethora of everyday objects, including medicine bottles, plates, and shoes, as well as a myriad of military items such as battery guns, gas masks, and ammunition. Would you like to go diving and check out this haunting graveyard? Let us know in the comments down below, and if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. Number 6. The discovery that wasn't. One of the most fascinating underwater discoveries never really happened. Known as the Miscovich Emeralds hoax, it came following the onset of the Great Recession in 2008. Hoping to cash in on the value of shipwrecked gems after plummeting into financial ruin, American diver and businessman Jay Miscovich concocted a plan to discover a 154-pound treasure trove of emeralds off the Florida coast. He carried out the deceptive scheme in 2010 by planting the gems near Key West and finding them later on. Miscovich persuaded several companies to fund an expedition to salvage the gems. In the meantime, he kept the phony discovery hidden from the public due to the confusing and controversial nature of marine salvage laws. As soon as word of the emeralds leaked, numerous experts doubted the authenticity of their finders' claims. They called for an investigation into Miscovich's credibility, noting that the site of the alleged discovery isn't connected with any known shipwrecks and that there's no evidence of one ever having occurred there. Eager to make a quick buck for themselves, several others filed lawsuits against Miscovich claiming rightful ownership of the gems. Amid the ongoing litigation, suspicions that the entire discovery was staged grew. Sadly, Miscovich decided he couldn't bear the weight of his problems. He committed suicide in 2013, leaving the emeralds in a legal limbo of sorts. In other words, it was unclear who they belonged to. In 2014, experts determined that the gems are coated in a modern epoxy, debunking Miscovich's claims that they were shipwrecked treasure. With Miscovich out of the picture, the jewelry stores that sold him the uncut emeralds bore the brunt of the blame for withholding information that would have revealed the gem's phony shipwrecked status much sooner had they been more forthcoming. Number 5. Noxious underwater spring. In early 2020, divers discovered a strange underwater spring off the Philippine coast. Situated 200 feet beneath the water's surface, it spewed carbon dioxide like champagne bubbles. Humans are usually to blame when it comes to unwanted emissions these days, but in this case, the cause was geological. A nearby underwater volcano was venting through open cracks in the ocean floor, causing the fizzling bubbles of CO2. Interestingly, the toxic spring was located near a thriving coral reef, prompting scientists to wonder how these systems can coexist so close to one another. Their concern is valid, especially considering how carbon dioxide is typically associated with death and destruction. The mysterious site is located in a stretch of water between the islands of Luzon and Mindoro, known as the Verde Island Passage. Known as Soda Springs, geoscientist Bayani Cardenas and his colleagues discovered it by accident while studying the effects of groundwater from nearby islands on local ecosystems. Its higher than average concentrations of CO2 make the site an ideal place for studying the ongoing mystery of how marine life adapts to increased carbon dioxide levels. Number 4. Niora. The Niora was a steam tug that sank near southeastern Australia in 1917 during a severe storm off Cape Jaffa. It began listing in heavy seas while pulling an American sailing ship called the Astoria. Niora's crew cut the tow line in a last-ditch attempt to save both themselves and the Astoria's crew. Unfortunately, it was too late for the tugboat, which went down as waves smashed its engine room door in. 2 crew members clung desperately to the top of a wrecked lifeboat and miraculously survived. Sadly, 14 others tragically succumbed to the unforgiving seas. The surviving pair managed to paddle to a lighthouse and were pulled to shore by its keepers, who braved the tempestuous sea in order to save the men's lives. They ended up receiving medals for the courageous rescue. Today, the Niora's remains sit 164 feet below the water's surface. Diver Steve Seville found the 104-year-old wreck in 2019 after researching it for several years and with the help of local fishermen. Speaking with 9 News, Seville described the historic vessel as a popular tug of Port Melbourne that helped to solve all sorts of shipping problems around Australia. Descendants of the Niora's survivors and one of the lighthouse keepers were informed of the landmark discovery. Number 3. Classic cars. If you owned or had the opportunity to drive an expensive car, the last thing you'd probably do is dump it into a river. Unless you were a getaway driver, that is. Acting on a tip from a self-proclaimed former criminal in early 2020, divers from the YouTube channel Adventure with Purpose found 9 submerged vehicles near a boat launch at the bottom of the Tualatin River outside Portland, Oregon. The finds included a 1973 Ford Mustang Mach-1 and a first-generation Mazda RX-7. While most of the vehicles were beyond saving, the Mustang and the RX-7 seemed salvageable. The divers summoned a tow truck to pull the cars to dry land. Retrieving them was no easy task. The Mazda was upside down, requiring workers to flip it over before the tow truck pulled it out. And while its wheels and interior parts were all present, its roof was pushed in, the paint was peeling, and salvagers were unable to pop the hood. Getting the Mustang out of the river was even more difficult because it was stranded even further into the water. When the team tried to lift the front end using inflatable balloons, the engine ripped from the chassis. They ended up having to call a heavy-duty rig to yank the car from the muddy river bottom. The vehicle was completely rusted out, and it folded beyond recognition while it was being moved. While the plans for the Mazda are unknown, it's probably safe to say that the Mustang is as good as gone. Number 2. Ocean Atlas. You can find the world's largest underwater sculpture, Ocean Atlas, at the bottom of the Caribbean Sea off the Bahamian capital of Nassau. Installed in 2014, the artwork depicts a girl carrying the weight of the ocean. It's a direct nod to the Greek myth of Atlas, who bore the weight of the world on his shoulders. Measuring 16 feet tall and weighing more than 66 tons, the massive sculpture was assembled piece by piece at its current location. The submerged statue was designed, built, and engineered by sculptor Jason DeCaires-Taylor. It's made from pH-neutral materials and will remain recognizable even after it's overtaken by marine life as part of an artificial reef. In addition to giving ocean creatures a desperately needed place to stay alive, Ocean Atlas helps to draw tourists away from the natural coral reefs. It's more important than ever to preserve these fragile habitats, which are suffering greatly from the effects of overvisiting and other human activities. As stated on Jason DeCaires-Taylor's website, the world's oceans and coral reefs are directly threatened by overfishing, habitat loss, ocean acidification, global warming, and water pollution. In his words, the artwork symbolizes the burden we are currently asking future generations to carry and the collective responsibility we must accept to prevent its collapse. Number 1. Long-lost Long Island shipwreck. Late in the Civil War, the Confederate commerce raider vessel CSS Tallahassee collided with a ship called the Adriatic off the coast of Long Island, New York. The 181-foot-long Adriatic plunged to the bottom of the Atlantic, roughly 30 miles south of Montauk Point. Divers rediscovered the wreck in early 2020, 156 years after it sank to its watery grave. Finding it was, in the words of author and former Nassau County Museum supervisor Harrison Hunt, especially significant for Long Islanders, as it highlights how close the Civil War came to home in the form of Confederate raiders. To make up for its limited industrial resources amid the pressure to assemble a navy, the Confederacy refitted steam and sail-powered vessels with cannons and sent them after Union ships. The encounter between Tallahassee and Adriatic happened on August 12, 1864, and was the final Confederate incursion into northern waters before the war ended. Tallahassee's crew removed nearly 200 passengers from the Adriatic and burned it, sinking it 220 feet beneath the water's surface. Commercial fishers discovered the wreck in 2016 when it got in the way of their catch. They alerted Long Islander John Noonan to its presence, and he gathered a team of divers to investigate the site. After verifying its checkered past through historical records, they began a series of dives to recover what's left of the Adriatic. Thanks for watching. Have you ever discovered something amazing underwater? Let us know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos right here on American Eye.